Sometimes life has a way of sneaking up on you. You're just going about your day, doing the dishes or folding laundry, thinking you know exactly how the rest of your story is going to play out. And then out of nowhere, there's a knock at the door or a chance meeting, and suddenly the script changes. That's exactly what happened to me on a quiet, unremarkable Tuesday afternoon. I was dusting the living room, lost in my own thoughts, humming along to an old song on the radio, when a simple knock interrupted my routine. I opened the door to find my neighbor standing there, looking a little different than usual. What started as a polite hello turned into something that completely caught me off guard. It wasn't anything scandalous, don't worry. It was something much deeper, something real and unexpected that I didn't even know I was missing. Before I get into the details, I'd love to know where you're listening from. It's always so comforting to think about these stories reaching people in all corners of the world. Maybe you're in a bustling city apartment or a quiet farmhouse or somewhere in between. It makes this whole thing feel less like a broadcast and more like a conversation between friends. And if this story resonates with you, if it touches something in your heart, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps me keep sharing these little slices of life with you, Dot, so let me take you back to that afternoon. The sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. I was in the middle of cleaning, moving the coffee table to get to those stubborn dust bunnies underneath. My back was aching a little, a gentle reminder that I wasn't 20 anymore. But there was a rhythm to the work that I found soothing. The smell of lemon polish filled the air, mixing with the faint sounds of the neighborhood outside, a dog barking in the distance, a car driving by slowly. I live on a quiet street in Portland, the kind of place where people mostly keep to themselves. But over the years, I've gotten to know a few of the neighbors. One of them is Thomas, a single man who lives a couple of houses down. He's around my age, maybe a year or two younger, with salt and pepper hair and a stride that suggests he still has plenty of energy left. We'd waved at each other across the lawns, exchanged pleasantries about the weather or trash day, but we'd never really talked. That Tuesday, I was dusting the mantel when I heard the knock. It was light, hesitant almost. I thought it might be a delivery or maybe Carla from next door needing to borrow a cup of sugar again. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Thomas. He looked a little flushed, a little unsure of himself. "Hi," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Sorry to bother you. I saw your front gate was open, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay." I blinked, taken aback. "Oh, yes. I was just letting some fresh air in while I cleaned. Spring cleaning in October, you know how it is." He smiled, and his eyes crinkled at the corners. He glanced past me into the house, looking like he wanted to say something else, but wasn't sure if he should. "I don't mean to intrude," he said finally. "But would it be weird if I asked for a glass of water? I've been out walking for a while, and I didn't realize how warm it had gotten." "Of course not," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "Come on in. It's much cooler inside." Thomas had never been inside my house before. He paused at the threshold, almost as if he was waiting for permission to cross an invisible line. I led him into the kitchen and gestured for him to sit at the small breakfast table by the window. "You're braver than I am," I said as I filled a glass from the tap. "I can barely bring myself to walk to the mailbox in this heat." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "It clears my head. Work has been intense lately. Walking is the only thing that seems to help." I turned around to hand him the water and really looked at him for the first time. He looked tired, not in a physical way, but in a soul-deep way. Like he was carrying a weight he couldn't put down. He took the glass, his fingers brushing against mine for a split second. "Thanks," he said. "Your house smells nice. Like lemons and old books." I laughed. That's probably accurate. I use way too much polish and I have way too many books. He took a sip of water and then looked at me, his expression serious. Can I ask you something kind of personal? My heart did a little flip. I nodded, not sure what to expect. Do you ever feel, he started, searching for the right words, like you're living in a chapter of your life that no one prepared you for? His question hit me right in the chest. It wasn't intrusive. It was honest. It was exactly what I had been feeling for months, maybe years. I sat down across from him, folding my hands on the table. All the time, I admitted. It feels like I followed all the rules, got married, raised the kids, had the career, and now I'm here. And I'm not sure what the next step is supposed to be. He nodded slowly, staring into his glass. Yeah, that's it exactly. A comfortable silence settled over us. It wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. I noticed the way the afternoon light caught the silver in his hair and the fine lines around his eyes. There was a gentleness to him that I hadn't seen before, a vulnerability that was hidden behind the polite waves and casual hellos. You know, I said, people don't really talk about this part. We're supposed to just be settled and content. But sometimes I feel like I'm still waiting for something to begin. He looked up and met my gaze. Me too. I don't know what it is, but I feel it. In that moment, something shifted. The distance between us, the polite neighborly barrier, seemed to dissolve a little. We were just two people sitting in a sunlit kitchen, sharing a truth we hadn't spoken out loud before. He glanced toward the living room. Your home feels ... warm, inviting. Thanks, I said. Want to see the rest of the tour? Since you're already here. He smiled and followed me as I showed him the living room I had just cleaned. He looked around with genuine interest, his hands in his pockets. This is my favorite spot, I said, pointing to the reading nook I'd set up by the window. It had a comfy bench with lots of pillows, stacks of books, and an old lamp that gave off the perfect reading light. It's where I escape when the world gets too loud. He walked over and sat down on the bench, running a hand over the spine of a worn paperback. I'd give anything for a place like this. My house is, well, it's a bit sparse. Cold, maybe. I sat down on the armchair across from him. You could change that, you know. It's never too late to make a space your own. He tilted his head, considering. Isn't it? We sat in silence again, but this time it felt companionable, like we were sharing a secret understanding. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Do you ever think, he asked softly, that maybe we aren't meant to do this part alone? Even at our age? I looked at him, surprised by his candor. I think about that a lot. Something in the air changed then. It was subtle, like a shift in the wind, but undeniable. A door had opened, just a crack, letting in a possibility I hadn't considered. I should probably let you get back to your cleaning, he said eventually, standing up. I walked him to the door. Thanks for stopping by, Thomas. It was nice. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. Would you mind if I stopped by again sometime? I smiled. I think I'd like that. And just like that, he was gone. But the feeling remained a sense of anticipation of something new taking root. I knew deep down that this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. The house was quiet, the same as always, but the silence didn't feel as heavy. I made my coffee and stood by the window, watching the street. It was just an ordinary Wednesday, but it felt full of potential. I found myself wondering if he would come back. Part of me was skeptical people often make plans in the moment that they don't keep. But another part of me, a hopeful part I hadn't heard from in a while, believed he would. And sure enough, later that afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I checked the clock for 15. I smoothed my hair and opened the door to find Thomas standing there again. This time, he was holding a small potted plant. "Hi," he said, holding it out to me. "I brought you this." It was a succulent in a blue ceramic pot. "Simple, resilient. What's this for?" I asked, taking it. "You mentioned your reading nook. I thought it might like some company." I couldn't help but smile. "That's really thoughtful. Thank you. Come in." He stepped inside, looking more relaxed than the day before. "I wasn't sure if it would be too much to come back so soon," he admitted. "Not at all," I said, placing the plant on the windowsill where it caught the light. "I'm glad you did." We stood there for a moment, the air smelling faintly of the cinnamon candle I had lit earlier. "Would you like some tea?" I offered. "That sounds great," he said. We went into the kitchen, and as the kettle boiled, he leaned against the counter, looking at the magnets on my fridge. Photos of my kids, postcards from trips taken years ago. "You have a family," he noted, looking at a picture of me with my son and daughter. "Yes," I said, pride swelling in my chest. "They're grown now. My daughter is in Seattle, my son is in Denver. They have their own lives, but they visit when they can." He nodded slowly. "I never had kids. Never really settled down in that way. Came close once, a long time ago, but life had other plans. Was it hard?" I asked gently. "Sometimes," he said. "I always thought there would be more time, you know? And then you wake up one day and realize the time has passed." I poured the tea and handed him a mug. Our fingers brushed again, a fleeting contact that sent a warmth through me. We moved to the living room and sat on the couch. It felt natural, easy. "So," he said, taking a sip of tea, "what does a day in the life of Claire look like, besides intense cleaning sessions?" I laughed. "Oh, I read a lot. I take long walks when the weather is nice. I bake when I'm stressed. It's not exactly a thrill a minute." "Sounds peaceful," he said. "It is," I agreed. "But sometimes peaceful is just another word for lonely." He looked at me with understanding in his eyes. "I know that feeling. I've walked past your house so many times, seen the lights on, and wondered what it was like inside." "It's warmer than I imagined," he added softly. We talked for hours. We talked about music, about our favorite books, about the strange, bittersweet beauty of aging. We talked about how our bodies change, how our memories soften the edges of the past. We talked about the simple joys, a perfect cup of coffee, a good night's sleep, the smell of rain. I felt a connection with him that I hadn't felt with anyone in years. It was like finding a kindred spirit right next door dot as the evening light began to fade. Turning the room a dusky purple, he stood up to leave. "Can I ask you something?" He said at the door. "Of course." "Would you ever want to go for a walk together? Just around the neighborhood?" I was surprised by how much I wanted to say yes. "I'd like that," I said. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Tomorrow, maybe around 6. 6 works," I said. "See you then," he said. He left, and I closed the door, leaning back against it with a smile on my face. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something real, something promising. The next day, I found myself fretting over what to wear for a simple walk. It felt silly. I was 50, not 15, but I wanted to look nice. I settled on jeans, a white blouse, and a soft blue cardigan. Casual but put together. When Thomas arrived at 6, he looked handsome in a simple jacket and jeans. "You look nice," he said. "So do you," I replied. Feeling a blush rise to my cheeks, we set off down the street as the streetlights flickered on. The air was cool and crisp, perfect for walking. We fell into an easy rhythm, our steps matching. We talked about small things at first, the neighbors' gardens, the new construction down the block. But as we walked, the conversation deepened. We reached a small park nearby and sat on a bench overlooking a pond. Ducks were gliding across the water, leaving ripples in their wake. It was peaceful. Can I ask you something kind of personal? He asked after a while. Go ahead. Were you happy? In your marriage? It was a heavy question, but I appreciated his directness. I looked out at the water. I thought I was, I said honestly. For a long time. We had good years. We raised wonderful children. But somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. We became roommates, co-parents, but not partners. And eventually, the silence between us became too loud to ignore. And now? He asked. Now, I'm figuring out who I am on my own, without the labels. It's scary, but it's also liberating. He nodded. I've been alone for a long time. Sometimes by choice, sometimes not. I told myself it was better that way, less complicated. But lately, I've been wondering if I've just been hiding. Hiding from what? From connection. From the possibility of getting hurt again. But also from the possibility of something good. He looked at me then, his gaze intense. Yesterday, after I left your house, I felt lighter. Just from talking to you. And it scared me a little because I don't want to rely on someone else to feel good. But at the same time, I've missed this. Being able to just talk to someone. I felt tears prick my eyes. I know exactly what you mean. It's not about needing someone to complete you. It's about wanting someone to share your life with, to witness it. He smiled. Exactly. The wind picked up and I shivered slightly. Without a word, Thomas took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. I'm fine, I protested weakly. Please, he said. Take it. I pulled the jacket around me. It was warm and smelled like hemp cedar and clean laundry. He sat back down, a little closer this time. I hope this isn't too forward, he said. But I really like being around you. It feels ... easy, like we skipped all the awkward small talk and went straight to the real stuff. My heart beat a little faster. I feel the same way. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was warm and firm. We sat there hand in hand as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear. It was a simple gesture, but it felt profound. When we walked back to my house, he kept hold of my hand. At the door, he turned to me. Thank you, he said. For tonight. Thank you, I replied. He hesitated for a moment, then leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. It was soft, gentle, respectful. Good night, Claire, he whispered. Good night, Thomas. He walked away, and I watched him go until he disappeared into the night. I went inside, still wearing his jacket, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the fabric. The next few days were a blur of happiness. Thomas called the next evening and asked me to dinner at his place. I said yes, without hesitation. His house was exactly as he had described it, a bit sparse, a bit bachelor pad-esque, but he had made an effort. There were candles lit, music playing, and the smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. He had made pasta and salad, simple but delicious. We ate and talked, laughing at shared stories and marveling at how much we had in common. He told me about his regrets, his dreams that hadn't quite worked out. I told him about my fears, my hopes for the future. After dinner, we sat on his couch with mugs of tea. The atmosphere was intimate, comfortable. I don't know where this is going, he said quietly, looking at me. And I'm not in a rush to put a label on it. But I know that being with you makes me happy. It makes me feel ... hopeful. Me too, I said. It feels right. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his hand lingering on my cheek. Then he kissed me. A real kiss this time. It wasn't frantic or desperate. It was slow, tender, and full of promise. It was the kind of kiss that says, I see you and I like what I see. When we pulled apart, we just smiled at each other. There was no need for words. As he walked me home later that night, Holding my hand, I thought about how strange life is. You think you know how your story goes, and then suddenly, a new character walks in and changes everything. At my door. He paused. Claire, he said seriously, I know we're just starting this, whatever this is, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'm in this. I squeezed his hand. I'm not asking for forever right now. Let's just take it one day at a time. Walk this path together and see where it leads. He nodded. One day at a time. I like that. He kissed me again, lingering for a moment before stepping back. Good night. I went inside and leaned against the door, my heart full. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was a real, grounded, adult beginning. As the weeks turned into months, Thomas and I settled into a wonderful rhythm. We weren't rushing toward marriage or moving in together. We were simply enjoying each other's company. We went for long walks, cooked dinners together, explored parts of the city we hadn't seen in years. He encouraged me to start painting again, something I hadn't done since my kids were small. I set up an easel in the garage, and he would sometimes come over and just sit with me while I worked, reading a book or tinkering with something, happy just to be in the same space. One afternoon, he brought me a flyer for an art class at the community center. You should teach, he said. You have a gift. I laughed it off at first, but the idea stuck. Eventually, I called the center, and to my surprise, they were looking for an instructor. I started teaching a small class of seniors, and it brought me so much joy. Thomas would wait for me in the parking lot after class, leaning against his truck with that easy smile, ready to hear all about it. My ex-husband noticed the change in me too. We were amicable, living separate lives, but still connected by our children. One day, he stopped by to pick up some old boxes from the attic. He saw my paintings drying in the garage and Thomas's truck in the driveway. You look happy, Claire, he said, sounding genuinely pleased. I am, I said. I really am. I'm glad, he said. We both deserve to be. It was a moment of closure I didn't know I needed. Thomas and I continued to grow closer. We navigated the holidays together, met each other's friends, and slowly integrated our lives. It wasn't always perfect. We had our disagreements, our moments of doubt, but we always talked through them. We had both learned the value of communication, of not letting silence build walls between us. One evening in late autumn, we were sitting on my back porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the leaves fall. Thomas turned to me. You know, he said, I used to think that the best parts of my life were behind me, that I had missed my chance for this kind of connection. Me too, I admitted. But now, he continued, taking my hand, I realized that maybe everything before was just preparing me for this. For you, I squeezed his hand, feeling a lump in my throat. I feel the same way. It's like a second act I didn't know was coming. A plot twist, he joked. The best kind, I agreed.